Okay, well, let's get into Richard's prompting of what Lucretius has to say about the soul slash mind. And he's already pointed out just now that it's rather confusing. And let's see if we can figure it out.
Yeah. Well, let me just, for me, the confusion, I think, comes from the fact that there are four terms: body, mind, soul, and spirit
Yeah.
that come into play here. Body and mind are obviously compatible. uh, and make up. I think he is saying the human, basically the human being, consists of body and mind. Uh, but then he also talks about spirit and soul. Are mind and spirit the same thing? Um, and is soul the mind and spirit together? As I think I gleaned from somewhere in there. That would at least account for all of the terms adequately, I suppose. But um, if body and mind are separate, but mind and spirit are one, and soul means the merger of body and mind, the human being alive, maybe problem solved, at least in terms of nomenclature. Discuss.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think he's got the mind. I think he's got the mind in control, but it's all one.
That's the professor speaking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got when I've said all I can say. Okay.
Say comparing.
I think he ascribes it all as one entity. You know that the soul and the mind are made up of very light, simple, small atoms. The mind has a slightly denser atom, and the soul has a less and more dispersed type of atom. And the mind, the mind has dominion over the soul. So I don't know that there's really a distinction that he makes. I think he looks at it as all one big ball of wax.
Wax. I didn't realize wax. Oh, yeah. Does wax come into it too?
Well, Forrest pointed out, and I think I don't have the solution for it, but we don't know Latin. Did this?
Oh, right.
Are there four separate Latin words used by Lucretius? Or do other translators come up with four soul and mind being separate in their translations?
Well, the Latin words are anima and animus.
For mind and body?
Mind and spirit?
Mind, no. For mind and
spirit.
And the other part. Okay, well, no, you figure it out.
I'm looking.
I just asked
professors.
I'm looking at page 90 of this Lucretius text. Towards the middle, he says, "Pay heed, I have more to say." And he did. To start with, I maintain that mind and spirit are held close together, compose one unity. But the Lord and Master holding dominion over all the body is purpose, understanding, in our terms, mind or intelligence, and this resides in the region of the heart. And he goes on from there.
Okay, so that mind and spirit are one. We can think of them as the same ball of wax.
At least in that passage.
Yeah.
Don't you think spirit and soul might be the same thing? Spirit and soul?
No, well, I think soul is both mind and spirit together. as but but if mind is spirit, then I don't know what soul is.
But he also says mind and sentient mind.
Sentient or
Satiate.
satiate.
In that same paragraph, he goes on to say, the rest of spirit is dispersed all through the entire frame, and it obeys the mind, moves, gains momentum at its nod and beck, and mind alone is sensible or wise. So, I mean, however clarifying the beginning of that paragraph is, as you continue, it becomes a little more obscured.
Yeah.
He also mentions in here that the spirit is composed of these four elements, right? Air, heat, I've forgotten them. And then
fire,
water.
They couldn't figure out the fourth element.
Heat, right. And then he suggests there might be a fifth element in another paragraph where he's talking about the work of creators, of artists, poets, and painters. Their imaginations are accessing and alluding to figures from history, from mythology, whatever. And he suggests there might be a fifth element that explains that access, not through the senses, but through through artistic activities and mythical remembrances and reconstructions. So, I mean, it is confusing. There is a lot being said here. Some of it, I think, is a matter of translation and not having an intimate and direct access to the original Latin.
Yeah.
Some of it, I think, is just inherently a little confusing. What is repeated constantly, and given our modern penchant to associate truth with perpetual repetition, is that all of these things are intimately connected one to another and inseparable. I mean, he says that a dozen times, maybe 2 dozen.
I think, Ron, I agree with you. In a way, he talks about it so much that he switches spirit and mind and back and forth. He almost talks about it too much. And so if you try to follow it, you just lose track of it.
But I think it's not. If you go over to page 91, the first at the end of the first stanza, he says, "From this example, all can recognize that spirit and mind are closely bound together, and spirit, struck by the impulse of the mind, propels and thrusts the body."
Yeah.
So,
yes.
I mean, there's some logical leaps in there that don't think are ever explained or he ever bothered to deal with. But
Mike, do you want to speak there?
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, later on 95 again, where he keeps talking about the subject over and over again. To me, then it becomes confusing. He starts talking about spirit inheres in every body. It is both the cause of health and guardian of the body. They cling together, which, they're two different things, but they can't be split asunder. I mean, so it's hard to say if they're two different things, but if you separate them, both something dies. It's just not clear. And I think that maybe his poetry got the best of him as opposed to trying to write philosophy. He was a poet. I mean, and Epicurus didn't like poets, which is a sidelight. But
but in that passage, that it sounds then what Lance said too, that mind and spirit are not the same. Richard hypothesized that they were.
Well, if not the same, somehow inexorably bound together, I guess, might be better than saying they're the same thing.
To come back to Mike's point,
that clarifies it.
I think what we're seeing here is this integration of a lyrical sensibility with a more concrete and practical philosophical objective, and he's using a huge number of metaphors and similes in lieu of rigorous deductive logic frequently, and he has a very imaginative sense of the way that all these pieces should come together. The abiding notion here is that they are fully integrated, that they are all combined, that we.
And what are those? What are all those things? I mean, why I started to ask this question just a minute or two ago. What is? Why is this an issue?
What did you say again? I'm sorry.
Why is it an issue?
Why is this an issue that he is wrestling with? Why is this important?
Well, so we live a good life.
But ultimately, it's all about his contention that when the body dies, the soul dies with it. There's no immortality. Everything is mortal,
and
which is a big leap, I suppose, for them and for us.
But he tries to logically reason to that. He says after you're dead, you weigh the same guy. He weighs the same as when he had his soul and when he didn't have his soul. So there you go.
Yeah. And in the very beginning, he announces that his intention is to use systematic thinking and rationality as fundamental tools in defeating mysticism, religion, the belief that Roman gods or Greek gods were active interventionists in the lives of men and women.
Right.
I think he's just trying to. I think he's just trying to figure this out, like we all are, and there isn't any easy answer. There isn't an answer, and what we feel from what we get from interactions with each other, whether it's an interaction with someone who's dying or an interaction with someone who's fully alive, where there's a connection made to a soul, that we can't understand that. These are questions that can't be answered.
What's the modern interpretation of what he is trying to get at?
What happens after you die?
Oh, Charlie, you are muted. Charlie, you are muted.
Yeah, thank you.
There you go.
I was going to say quantum physics it sees this swirling interaction of like-minded molecules and stuff that are always constantly moving around and so forth, but they have moments of coalescence. And query, how do you define that? Even they coalesce, and I'm influenced here by Carlo Rovelli. I don't know if anybody's read his work. He's a modern physicist, Italian, Carlo Rovelli. Anyway, to answer your question, Forrest, it's that's what I see. And how do you, in his terms, poetry or in concrete terms that we might understand, how do you portray that when it's constant motion of mind, spirit, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, I would say a modern interpretation, I'm thinking of Carl Sagan, who said we are made of star stuff, that that is what we are. We were created in stars and our atoms and molecules. And I think that I may be reading too much into him, but if my memory was he did not believe in spiritual immortality, that he was perfectly fine with this notion that when he died, the elements that made up his body continued to exist in the universe, that that may not be as satisfying as saying the soul exists forever, but it also kind of, there's a sort of acceptance in his part that you are this material stuff and it continues after you die, and that's kind of the way it is, and you don't suffer because of that. It isn't warm and fuzzy, but
I'm trying to push you toward thinking about your own self as just as an example. Now, you could lose an arm and your life continues. It's not quite as easy, but you can continue. You can lose two arms. You can lose two arms and a leg, or two arms and two legs. You can still keep going, but you have much less, of a life. You can lose one eye, and you can lose two.
We get the picture.
Yeah, at some point, if you're shot and close to your heart directly or to the brain.
Well, think of Stephen Hawking.
That's the end.
Yeah. Forrest, you got me thinking of the Black Knight in the Monty Python's The Holy Grail, who has both his arms and his legs cut off. And he's just a stump on the ground, still trying to say he's going to fight.
Well,
in a real life sense, a friend of mine, a law partner, we made him the ultimate voice on issues of ethics in the firm. Rather than convoke all the partners and make a decision, we all agreed that Mike Janik was going to be the guy who decided.
Wow.
And he developed ALS, and over a 7-year period of time, withered away, but he still could totally have his mind and spirit were intact right to the very, very, very end. And so we would bring a case to him on issue, should we accept this client or what have you. And long story short, he would tap. He had a thing on his wrist or on his wheelchair that he could tap certain letters that would mean affirmative or negative. And he decided some big issues that way. And so his mind and spirit and moral judgment were all intact, but his body was completely gone.
Isn't that what Stephen Hawking suffered from?
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. And there you had a case of a totally wasted body, and yet a very operative mind.
Right. Exactly.
So what was left?
Well, this amalgam in my mind of the combination of spirit and mind. Didn't mind, the body was gone, but the mind and spirit were still intact. And the rest of us observing it could say, yes, yeah, it's there. And that's just so query what in Hawking's or my friend's case was there. Well, it was just literally his.
But you can't say though. You can't say that it's
some bodily part that was working.
Well, the brain is part of the body, and it was working.
Yeah.
So I don't think you can say he had no body left. He had a remnant. He had a crucial part, the crucial part, you might say, of the body was left. If you took away that, when that failed.
Well, we're not talking, the body is largely gone. It's the mind. There's still a wire running from his mind to his finger. to make a judgment.
Right. But once the body died, that's what killed the mind, isn't it? In his case.
Yeah.
I mean, a mind can go before the body, I
Often
suppose.
does.
But he maintains that the soul is physical. It is born, grows, and dies with the body. When body is destroyed, soul cannot maintain its form.
Right.
Thus, the body kind of serves as a means by which the soul exists.
Yeah.
Where are you, Tony, in that on the book?
This is Mind versus Soul, approximately page 90, some 1 or 2.
Uh-huh.
Because the soul is physical, it is born, grows, and dies with the body. When the body is destroyed, soul cannot maintain its form. Thus, the body serves as means by which the soul exists. The state after death is same as state before death.
Well, because he's a materialist, he has to give this. He can't talk about the soul in any terms except physical, it seems to me. The soul has to be a substance. Otherwise, where did it come from? Nothing comes from nothing. So in modern Christianity, the soul is talked about as this airy fairy thing that has no substance. You don't have to worry about it because you've got a God out there that is responsible for its existence. If you take that away, as Lucretius does or Epicurus does, then you have to account for if you're going to deal with the soul at all. That's another question. Why does he bother? But if you're going to, then you've got to give it, I would say, a kind of fake substance, because it's nothing. It's not like any other substance that he talks about, in that you can't see it, feel it, sense it, smell it.
Well, it is like some other ones, I think, Richard. He's talking about very small, very especially small atoms, and just a few of them, and they are very slippery, and they don't attach very well, but they do attach in the soul or in the mind. There is a kind of attachment, but it's a very loose one.
A loose attachment.
That echoes Randy Newman, who said short people have no body.
I don't quite that. Yeah, that doesn't help me. The soul is loosely attached to itself, or loosely combined.
Loosely attached to other atoms that are loosely attached to others, and also loosely attached to the body, but attached.
Right. Well,
but it can be severed from the souls from the atoms that make up the body by.
Yeah, but when it's severed, it's the end.
It's the end of the soul as well.
End of both.
I may be over speaking for Lucretius there, where I say it has no visible or perceivable substance, but
of course, yeah, right.
But it has substance. It has substance.
Not like the objects that we perceive.
At the bottom of page,
nor is it like,
as Ron said earlier, it's something that is he reasoned to, he inferred.
Right.
At the bottom of page 94, he says, in our limbs and all our substance, mind and spirit join their hidden forces and are quite unseen, being formed of small and none too many motes. So this fourth nameless
motes. Oh no, not
hides
motes.
in the minutest motes is Lord of all, rules body and mind.
Good.
Whatever that fourth element is.
Mm-hmm.
So taking all of this into consideration, he's okay with all of this. He accepts the mortality of the soul. And he hopes that this allows individuals to enjoy a life without anxiety. He is at peace with this philosophy of the dissolution of the body and its reincorporation into the earth, and he is projecting a sense of confidence that this theory is a one size fits all for everybody, and that oh look, since we're all back to earth, but what he is still, which I brought up in the beginning, taking great lengths to convince us that, look, because of all of this, we should all be okay with it. But he is denying the abstract that everyone considers individualistic to be gone.
Okay, well, let's hold off on that still.
I know. I knew you were going to say that.
Isn't it that
a little bit more clear?
Why does he talk about the soul at all? Is it only because he has inherited a literature that assumes the existence of a soul, something called the soul, which is immortal, which lives on in Hades or wherever these things go?
And Plato talks about it, and Protagoras and other people like that.
Okay, it seems to me Lucretius or Epicurus, I don't know who we're talking about, could simply deny the existence of the soul, as modernists do. There's nothing besides the body. When the body goes, you're gone. But maybe that's too much of a stretch in his time. Everyone believes in the soul, and so he has to give it a kind of reality, and yet still make it mortal.
I think it's useful to recall that this is part of a dialogue. I mean, we have a discourse that's underway between the Stoics and the Epicureans, and the nomenclature that the Stoics use is very likely to be something that he feels a compulsion to address and to disarm or to absorb into his own philosophy. I wonder, I mean, you were saying for us that next semester you'd like to teach a course on the Stoics. Do the Stoics use soul as a concept and a driver of their thinking?
Well, I haven't gone back to review.
I'm sorry.
That yet, but I'm trying to think about that right now. I think that they did not. That the Stoics were very skeptical.
Okay.
But I think they did not. But I'll let you know when I catch up.
Well,
I didn't put you on the spot. I'm sorry.
Maybe the last.
I think Forrest is right.
What I find so interesting about this work is how Lucretius was such a great observer.
Yes.
Of the world, of the trees and the animals and people, and so on, and there were some things that were kind of puzzling about that, like with the animals. How come animals can move? Why do they fight each other? Some of them can run fast.
Why do they bark?
Some can't. And likewise with people, we're very active unless we suffer one of those terrible accidents. But we're very active. We do things. We feel things. We establish relationships and so on. How does that all come about? And he infers that there is some source, there's some director of that, and the director is not some god up in the skies, and it's not the way Aristotle thought, that things have a kind of preordained, acorn is going to become an oak, and a baby human being is going to become an adult if nothing untoward happens. So he's figuring that out.
Doesn't he ascribe all of that to Mother Nature? Isn't that's his God?
Well, no, that's a metaphor.
Okay.
Well, it's simplistic.
That's a metaphor for simply saying this is the way things naturally occur.
To me, it's simplistic. You could say simplistically, all this, the fact that we have agency and we can act, that's all because the atoms swerve. And, they deviate from their straight lines. Now, I don't happen to agree that makes a lot of sense, but that's kind of his argument. It's in the swerve of the atoms that we get our free will to act.
Yeah.
Forrest, can you clarify when you say things are preordained and there's an expectation that an oak will become that an acorn will become an oak, and these are physical attributes, but what is not preordained is how the mind will operate throughout the course of its existence. Is that making sense?
No, I'm waiting for.
I mean, you talked about things being preordained, right? That an acorn will become an oak and a child will become an oak. What is not preordained is how the soul will become.
Yeah, Aristotle wouldn't say preordained. He would say that's the form that the acorn is going to going to aim for if it doesn't get eaten up by a squirrel or whatever.
But the soul is not preordained.
No, that's right.
Produce.
What do we need in order to be able to run fast or walk fast or think fast? No, I take back the last one.
So it's all the brain, right?
That slipped out there. To run fast, what do we need? Well,
legs.
Nike.
We need to.
We need a body.
A desire to move, but we need to have muscles. And how do we make our muscles work?
From our brain.
We've got a vertebra that has nerves running down.
Neurons
come into play when we do physical activities. I mean, that's what we would say today.
Can I say something? Richard said something about having to. Richard said something about having to address the soul because the soul was a topic of discussion in literature and people talked about it. But I just wonder, how different is it to think a thought, have a belief, wiggle your pinky, breathe? Aren't these all coming from the brain as a mechanism to control what's going on? And, we've severed it into these pieces that we say have completely separate realms, but from my perspective, it seems like it's all coming from the same place.
Well, I think that's what today we would agree on that. But this guy didn't even know what the brain was.
Yeah,
and he was.
But he broke it into pieces, right? If you have a belief and a feeling, and and that's a separate thing from movement of your body, from emotion. I mean, these were separate domains.
He didn't know about
time.
Right, but he didn't know about the brain chemistry. He didn't know about electrical impulse. He didn't know any of the things that we now know.
But
that neuroscientists.
He's wrestling with those problems.
Right, he is.
He's trying to explain.
But he can't view it as a singular thing. They have to be viewed as separate areas that have their own description, and they somehow or another connect, but they're separate. Even today, when you listen to people talk about AI, they talk about consciousness and soul and purpose, and will digital stuff ever be able to have that? And it's sometimes it breaks down. It's like, is it really a thing that you need to describe separately, or is it the way we interact with things that makes a person conscious or not? Deviating a little bit, but it seems like these separate domains need to have full strategies and descriptions around them, without too much about how they fit into a singular model.
Well, that term consciousness is perhaps important because that we might be able to use that word as a synonym for maybe spirit in Lucretius. It's the thing, the sense of oneself, which is different from simply having a mind. Animals have brains and minds of a sort, but not the kind of self-consciousness I think that human beings have.
Is that just the ability to see yourself?
To see yourself, to know that you are an entity, to have a consciousness.
Part of our brain can see ourselves and make determinations about ourselves.
Well, I think, therefore I am. Yeah, that sort of idea.
I've heard of that one.
That's so last year though, last semester.
There has been a real progression from the time of Descartes, who thought that animals were just mechanisms that did not think, and anybody who has had a dog knows that dogs think. Not sure about cats.
Nice. My cats have
now we're thinking not only about birds thinking and maybe insects, but there's a lot of current literature about how trees think. You might have read some of that, how trees seem to, in a forest, find ways to protect one of them that gets attacked by something.
But is it thinking or is it sensing?
Other danger and so on. So we've gone a long way in attributing thinking to more and more living things.
Well,
but anyway, going back simply to human beings and maybe animals, Lucretius is wrestling with that issue, and as Richard has said, and others, Lance, have said, he doesn't have the tools that thinkers have a couple centuries later, 5 centuries later.
He does say there is a poverty of our speech. He searches for words as he says the poverty of our speech makes it hard for him to explain how basic elements mingle. And when he says that there's for him a poverty of our speech, is he saying that he knows what it is but hasn't the words for it, or he doesn't know what it is?
Yeah, I think we might be doing him a disservice by trying to parse out the body and the soul, because I don't think that's what he's saying in this. I'm looking at the middle of page 96, and so from life's conception, body and soul possess, even in the womb, a kind of intertouch from which they come to learn the way life moves, and separation is evil, ruin, death. So, since their life depends upon their union, their mutual bond, you must conclude their nature is also, in its very essence, joined. Which also made me think that he was probably not pro-choice, since mind and soul are joined in the womb. He probably against abortion.
Right, sentience. Well.
I noticed that
I do think that Tony's point about we lack the words to explain what we sense, that to some degree that kind of it I'm not sure it summarizes Lucretius, but because in fact when he lacks an explanation, maybe that's when he falls back on his poetry. He does have words. It's just that the words do not necessarily always shed more light than his observations have already provided.
And poetry in general has all kinds of forms and all kinds of objectives. I mean, didactic poetry tries to teach us lessons and demonstrate scientific facts or facts about the universe. Lyrical poetry wonders and imagines the sense of fulfillment we get when we, as spectators on human conduct or nature, marvel at its specialness. And I think what he's doing here is a little bit of both, and he's trying to identify issues and trying to drive us to conclusions, but he's doing it in a more lyrical way. He's positing apparent contradictions. He's proposing practical resolutions, but he's not coming to a definitive version of how it is that the entirety of our experience, how it all hangs together.
Right.
He's trying to get there. We're trying with him as readers of his poem, but his ambition in the poem is to raise issues and to define boundaries about what's known and what can be proved and what can't, and to wonder at the rest.
The way things are up to a point.
Exactly. Yep.
Give the guy a break.
Have we done enough with this?
The guy needs to give us a break.
Well, he's gotten under everybody's skin a bit, I think.
Particularly these days.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I've written a little bit there in my note to you about how even in translation, there's a lot that's just beautifully said by him, and I hope you remember that part of it too. So let's get on back to Lucretius and death, as Tony wanted us to. Uh, we dealt with this on Wednesday. It seemed to be something that all of you seem to agree that this doesn't provide you with any peace of mind, and he intends that. That's the whole message of his work. He's trying to lead us to live a pain-free, meaning pain-free not in a physical sense, but the emotional sense, and not to have anxiety. But that doesn't seem to work for us, except in, a case. Well, I cite my brother as an example of a kind of not the ordinary example, something out of the ordinary, somebody for whom we can say, oh, that was a peaceful ending, and it would fit in with what Lucretius has to say. But not many deaths are like that, as you all said. So
yeah.
Yeah, but I'm going
to. I think
he loses out in the end.
Loses some of us, but personally, I'm fine with it. I mean, so of this group of 11 people, maybe I'm the outlier, but I'm fine with the Carl Sagan view.
I think his grasp of the obvious is fine, but what the real issue is not dying; it's fear of dying. That's what people live with, and I don't really think he addresses that in any meaningful way that I could discern.
So, Forrest, in your last summary to us on this class, you asked if he has failed.
Yeah.
If his primary goal was to release everyone of their anxiety, I really put some thought to that, and I came up with two conclusions. No, I don't think he has failed in presenting his case. I think that he has brilliantly and eloquently recorded all of nature's assets, and his prose is overwhelming. But has he failed at recognizing that one size doesn't fit all? That everyone is not in keeping with his theory of, dust to dust. That somewhere we must continue, that the soul must continue. And in that respect, I don't think he has convinced everyone. And so is that a failure?
Well, yeah, to just expand on that, there are lots of reasons, I think, why people fear death and resist it. One of them, and I don't think that the crucial variable is always the afterlife or not. Some people fear death because that's what they're afraid of. They're afraid of going to hell, but even if you can rationally and emotionally reject that possibility, there are plenty of reasons not to look forward to death or even accept it willingly, including I'm not done. If this is all there is, if it's just this life, I haven't lived it. I'm still too young. I haven't finished my work. I don't want to leave the people around me, on and on. I'm not sure that Lucretius addresses those very real anxieties about death that may or may not have anything to do with an afterlife.
Steve, were you wanting to say something?
Yeah, I don't know where this is, but I went back to Feldman's introduction. And at the end of it, he quotes Lucretius saying, "Our terrors and our darkness of mind must be dispelled then, not by sunshine's rays, not by those shining arrows of the light, but by insight into nature and a scheme of systematic contemplation." And it doesn't seem like he's trying to force a philosophy down on anybody, but so long as you have a systematic way of looking at things, I think you're better off.
Yeah, I like that too. It's a way to not have to decide definitively one way or the other, but if you have a superstructure, psychologically, morally, okay, dust to dust may be real, but it's too bad I have to go today. If you're able to have a system you believe in that that helps you manage the factors as they evolve, then you're okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, your factors meaning your daily life.
Yeah, right down to the last second type thing, you know. I remember reading a obituary of my great grandfather, some Swiss immigrant out in Illinois, and there was a very detailed description of his last moments, in which everyone who was around him, all his family and everywhere, were convinced that he was happy because he was going to the promised land. And it was told with such precision in this 1903 obituary that I couldn't help but think that everybody, including him, agreed with whatever his last second moral construct was. It all fit together for him.
Obituary writers had to be able to do that at the turn of the 20th century. Virtually every obituary you read is going to have some version of that.
Happy passing.
Happy passing, the good death, death. And that, of course, it's really for the survivors. It's a service that the newspaper is providing for those who have who are still alive.
That's still done.
I'm going to say personally, I'm equally afraid of both heaven and hell. I don't see if I could go to heaven, and I think I should go to heaven. If I do get there, I don't see where I'm going to get on with anybody or make friends. I just don't see how that's going to work.
Who are you going to play golf with, for God's sake?
I'm equal, or play golf. I could probably maybe shoot my age then, but
maybe it'd be like the thinkers in the Renaissance, where you first go to purgatory and have to spend time there until you can eventually get to heaven.
Right.
I might be better off in purgatory.
Well, of course, when you get to heaven, you have to deal with ex-wives and houses. And so it isn't always an easy idea. You know?
Well,
we're all so wonderful talking about death. We just chuckle away.
We love it. We love it. Well, yes. You have to laugh, as they say. There's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, well, I know many obituaries today still talk exactly as was described. Yeah. I mean, you see many of the obituaries, especially in our little local newspaper, the Star Democrat, because it's a local newspaper, so the obituaries are longer than the newsletters or news articles. They're very long. And so many of them end up with, we're so happy that Aunt Mabel is with God.
Right.
And I would say the vast majority of it end up with that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, isn't that because today families write the obituaries and they want to get either their religious views or or the views of the deceased out there. Aunt Mabel went to meet her maker happily on Saturday, always surrounded by her loved ones. I'm amazed that that loved ones are so ubiquitous.
That doesn't
so
really
ubiquitous. Yeah.
And available.
And,
and they get along well
matter
enough
how
to
far away
get
they
together.
live.
Yeah,
As someone said, I'm a dog person too, and I've been on some of the dog sites on Reddit and seen some memes whereby you go to heaven and all of your dogs are there, to greet
Great.
you.
Are they going to get along? Yeah.
I have had 5 dogs. I don't think there's any way. I mean, that's like probably hell for me to take care of 5 dogs. I like to see them again.
Well, maybe they'll take care of you.
Would you like to say something? I see you chuckling away here sometimes.
Chuckling has become an art for me, and I appreciate it, partially because I'm here to listen to this. No, I got into the history of Western philosophy, Bertrand Russell, and I've been reading his, 1,000 pages, and there's a lot to be said. I'm going back to this book. It's worth having done it, and I'm picking up ideas from this. So I've got some really interesting reading to continue, and I don't have any great thoughts about it.
But I like that title, though. There's a lot to be said.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say it all. Bertrand Russell.
It's a good book, really is. So, but I
What-
haven't had it on
Well, my other question was, what do you have a feeling that there are some important things that are left out by Lucretius?
Well, that basic concept of addressing the dissolution of the soul. I mean, that's what everyone is dealing with, your individualistic being. That's pretty basic. I mean, he just goes on and meticulously describes the atoms and its functions and its space and its voids and its movements and its randomness. But he's not addressing, and he hasn't throughout, the concept of the soul and the spirit continuing, which is the essence of everything.
Other than saying that the soul is not immortal, but he does not go further. I can't find anything where he goes further on that.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, yeah.
I think he addresses superstition he's very dismissive of, but he really doesn't address the anxiety that most people feel about dying.
Right.
Which is different from superstition. It's a lot more complicated. And I don't think
yeah, people aren't just going to willy-nilly, oh, okay, so I'm going to become dirt. Oh, okay, so now I feel a whole lot better about it. You know?
Another subject that I don't think that he deals with, at least not in depth, has to do with social issues, with institutions, with the basis of governance and of socially determined rules and right procedures. I mean, this is a very individualistically focused poem and treatment of issues. He skips from the atomic realm. We're told there are an infinite number of atoms, and they're always falling down unless they swerve and bump into each other and recombine. And we have one universe stacked on top of another in that process. So the chance that we're going to come up with a new and interesting set of creations in the future is high. But we missed the whole intermediate ground of the foreground of community development, of the creation of city-states in Greece, or of the empire in Rome. He doesn't address those issues. very much. He talks, I guess, about the Carthaginians trying to invade Rome from the north. But that's in its defense, but doesn't say very much about that. And there's also no historic framing of issues. He doesn't create a context in which we can appreciate this work as compared with other efforts by competing philosophers. I mentioned the Stoics before. Apparently, there was and continues to be quite a contentious interaction between both sets of believers, but he doesn't dwell on that. He dismisses the pre-Socratics as being naive and ill-informed, but he doesn't talk about other philosophical schools. He doesn't talk explicitly, I think, about Plato or Aristotle either.
And talking about other philosophers, he except for Epicurus and Democritus before him, he mostly criticizes them, doesn't he?
Yes. There's only one.
Excuse me. Isn't there also this? It seems like a big topic, but we don't have time for it, I guess. All knowledge of the truth originates out of the senses, he says. This is book 4. Right. I mean, that's absolutely crucial for him. And yet, he also he acknowledges that there are limits to the senses and what and how they perceive. Right. We've been through this one before, and maybe we don't need to revisit it. But it does seem to me that his discussion of it is woefully inadequate. He just states it more than proves it. And
what does he help us to understand? A very important part of human life has to deal with, as Ron said, morality, what's right and what's wrong. And, we're really dealing with this enormously today in our politics. But we do it also as individuals and with our family and so on. What kind of message about morality do we get out of Lucretius? How does he help us to think about moral issues?
Well, you mentioned what is missing, and I had a sense that somewhere in his analysis of what he can observe, his level of science is fantastically good, helpful, and so forth, and even convincing in modern terms. But he leaves out the spiritual residue that may be left by somebody's moral behavior. Somebody who led a good life, and we all would agree that their time spent was worthy and useful and good, and then history takes over and continues to assess that. I read an article by Annette Gordon Green in a recent, I think it was New York Review of Books, article about Jefferson, in which I believe that her essay concluded that with all his positives and negatives in the end, he still was unable to detach himself from his moral failing as a Virginia gentleman who kept and used enslaved people. So she was making a moral. I mean, she's written books and books about this Jefferson and so forth, and is a deep respected current scholar. But she was making, even this month, February 26, issue article about a moral judgment, which is a residual that continues to be accessible. And we all know, don't we all celebrate the spirit of people long after they're gone, not just at the moment of death, but we draw inspiration. You note the word from the spiritual activities or behavior, or in this case, here we are reading Lucretius's poem and marveling at it, a combination of his spirit and mind. So that I didn't feel like he gave enough credit to the residual, whatever we might call them, effects of a person, which to me adds is a necessary addition to his science.
If we're looking,
Dovetailing that, I mean, he ascribes everything to to some type of kind of an atomic law, nature. It all springs by nature from the seed, and yet he also speaks other places about human freedom, moral responsibility, and the two don't really reconcile themselves, or he doesn't explain how one leads into the other.
I think he takes a pretty reductionist view of history also. In book 5, he talks about what happens to those who seek power and achieve it, and he finds an inexorable pattern of falling from heights. I love this line: "What was once too much feared becomes in time the what we love to stomp on."
Yeah.
Let's hope so. But but that it I mean that it seems to me doesn't account for it. It's not like all tyrannies have gone away. Many have and have been reconstituted. And have held on for centuries. There is no, it seems to me, there is no infallible law here that means what goes up must come down, as he is, I think, pretty clearly suggesting in book 5. I assume this is still on the list of things we find unsatisfying or lacking.
I don't know if there's any similar undertaking in the history of philosophy or indeed poetry where the author has such an ambitious range and domain over which he endeavors to make definitive statements and ultimate conclusions and integrate numerous, if not every, certainly numerous aspects of human existence, and to do it in a way that apparently, at least to him, is easier to digest and to understand and to be effective in poetic verse than it is if he'd written this in a more traditional narrative format.
Yeah.
But this, I mean, all by itself as a work of art, as a work of poetic imagination, I think is a remarkable undertaking, and it's quite glorious and transcends death, as it were, all by itself as an artistic statement. I mean, I love a lot of the analogies that he uses as arguments. I love the way in which he infers a lot of things, consequences from just how round and how tiny particular categories of atoms are, for example. I mean, that becomes almost routine. Things get tinier and tinier and tinier as you proceed from book 1 through book 3 and on to book 4.
What would you say Lucretius thinks is good?
Well, he holds up the behavior of the gods as the paradigm, the exemplar of the way in which men should live their lives, with acceptance and wisdom and acknowledgement, and without active intervention into other men's affairs.
I find his treatment of the gods very confusing. That doesn't sound like the gods we read about, have read about, and others have written about. There are exemplars of all kinds of things, some good and some very bad, aren't they?
But for Lucretius, they are only good.
I know. That's why I'm saying I think that's...
How could he know anything about the gods if he says the gods never interact with man? I didn't get that part of it.
I don't think you can know anything about. I think, Valant, you're right, but he was aware of all the myths associated with the gods and the stories, and I guess he accepted the good ones. I mean, some of them are pretty awful. Prometheus having his liver eaten out for an eternity because he gave us fire. I mean, it seems.
Were you saying the gods were not all they were cracked up to be?
But I want to riff off on something Ron said. I mean, I think we're falling in a pattern of criticizing of what's missing in Lucretius, where if you flip it and go, what's there? There's a lot there. I mean, considering this guy without the tools of science, he wrote a lot of interesting stuff. And I mean, some of his poetry is pretty phenomenal. I think it was, when I studied philosophy back 50 years ago, in the graduate school I was in, they just blew by Lucretius. I mean, we didn't read him at all. And I think that was a terrible mistake. I found, for example, right at the beginning of book 2, I don't know, gentlemen or ladies and gentlemen, are familiar with the concept Schadenfreude, which is the idea that you enjoy other people's misery, which is a wonderful German phrase we don't really have an English translation for. He deals with it right at the beginning of book 1, talking about, should we feel good when other people suffer? I thought, wow, that's pretty amazing. That's Psych 101 today. So I thought there's a lot in this book.
I found a note. I had a lot of time on my hands. I've been reading the notes in the back of the book. And I underline this one. It says, likewise, occasional swerving of atoms within the human soul make free will possible. If moral man were not free from the normal mechanisms, the atoms composing his soul would compel him to obey the iron laws of determinism, and he would be a complete prisoner of matter and hence a moral automaton. Epicurus considered bondage to matter worse than the tyranny of willful and irrational gods, but our own feeling of freedom, Lucretius testifies, are evidence that we are free. But if a man's freedom and moral responsibility rest on the random and unpredictable swervings of atoms, he is still the prisoner of these uncontrollable mechanisms and no better than a moral freak. There you go.
Wow.
Who controls the
Freak is
swerves?
strong.
Thank you.
I think we got a moral freak running the country too.
Yeah, it happens.
But there are these. It's presenting moments when people are having to make choices, and one of the things that you just read made me think that in this swirl of atoms that have to do with our judgments, our behavior, upon which we may be assessed downstream. Somebody said on the news yesterday, I'm doing this X, whatever it was, in my opinion, the right thing. But he said, because I want my daughter to remember me for having done this. And I thought, yes, that's exactly right. Those the swirling atoms of the moment in his judgment, etc. What do I do? Do I go left, right? Do I say X? Do I say Y? He had to make a choice, and he did. And he did it because he wanted that spirit, if you will, represented by his action, to be remembered by his daughter. And I thought, yes, Lucretius may be completely right, but he sets up what did Steve say about a contemplative superstructure that permits you to make judgments about, well, my father did the right thing at that moment, therefore I honor him better.
Yeah. Forrest, I think it's only fair that we be able to correlate the times we are living in with some of what he says, Lucretius says. And I wrote a few things that really stood out. What a man really is, the time to learn comes when he stands in danger or in doubt. But avarice and blind desire for honors urge man on to trespass on areas where the law forbids them. And they struggle night and day as criminal accomplices to win toward heights of wealth, and wealth. And such wounds as these are aggravated by the fear of death. Men seem to think that bitter poverty and the contempt of a low position brings or are far from sweet and a reassuring life. A false panic harries them.
I think what's clear in several places is that Lucretius is very much against venality, against men and women who are driven by small intentions, defined narrowly in terms of how they know their self-interest, whether it's material or emotional or whatever. He repeats that theme in several different places in several different ways. What he doesn't do is project a positive strain, a set of virtues, a set of conducts which elevate human beings and which justify their exertions and their thoughtfulness.
So you have to kind of infer from what he sees as negative human behavior, negative human goals. You kind of have to infer that the opposite of that would be good.
Yeah. Yes, I think that's the case. Yep.
Including the sex maniac and, at the end of book 4. The opposite of that would be a loving relationship between people sexually and in other ways, a respectful relationship. So you can kind of construct an ethic, a morality, by some of the negative examples he gives.
But of course, he leaves it to us to implement, to apply what he prescribes, which is a simple life, a quiet life. I think a life that does not make excessive demands on others and so forth, which of course, is what is the impulse that drove monks, into the caves.
Except to include companions that you converse with.
Okay, in twos and threes into the caves, to live, a life cut off from the larger society, and I suppose to pray. But that has always struck me as the ultimate kind of selfishness, not selflessness. I mean, it's a kind of selfishness in the name of self-denial. But what good does it do anybody? I suppose if you think you're spending all your time praying for humanity, you can convince yourself that you're doing something for humanity. But who believes that today? So he has a model, but it strikes me as being subject to a lot of variation depending upon one's own will, one's own choices. That goes with the territory.
And it's not about helping other people.
It certainly,
except for spreading the word.
That's not out there explicitly in any way, shape, or form. You could read that into it if you wanted to. You could lead a simple life of service to others, but you could also lead a simple life of ignoring others.
I really enjoyed this class a lot, and I've just soaking up all of this because I'm not a philosopher, but reading this and listening to everyone has been really helpful. Even though this is seems to be such a exquisite or brilliant work of art, this huge poem, I'm left bothered by it. I feel more anxious after taking this class about death and dying than I did before. I just think he leaves out a lot of the comfort of knowing you've led a good life. He leaves that out or something. He leaves out a lot of human aspects of ending your life and feeling fulfilled. And I'm kind of obsessed with obituaries. I've always read them. I read books on them. I think it's a true art form. And I can really see and read how one obituary will describe a person as they lived really well, instead of they're up in heaven with their God, or, really gets to the core of it. And I love that art form. And this book just kind of misses some of that for me. But I want to thank you all for sharing your thoughts because I've loved it.
Well, maybe the Stoics will have some answers.
Yeah.
Maybe. Fingers crossed.
There's always the next semester, isn't there?
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you all. You guys are just a super class. I so much enjoy working with you on these issues, and hope to see you in the spring. I think it's the class I think is going to be in April, so there will be plenty of time in advance to order the translation that I'll pick out, which I haven't done yet. So let's bring it to a close and some good notes.
Thank you so much, Forrest.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Forrest.
Everyone stay well. Great session.
Thank you.